The nights in Dubai are rarely quiet. They shimmer with life, with laughter, with the jeweled rhythm of a city that never forgets to dream. But ever since she appeared, the nights began to soften, as if the moon itself leaned closer, to listen to the unfolding story. Between the Prince of Hearts and the woman no one knew, Fazza found himself walking more slowly, breathing more deeply, smiling more quietly. His world, once filled with duties and distant horizons, now felt like a poem still being written, line by trembling line. He met her often in places untouched by noise, under the shade of ancient goff trees, beside the still desert lakes that mirrored the sky, on the rooftops where Dubai glittered below, like a constellation that had fallen to earth. She would stand there, her hair whispering secrets to the wind, her eyes holding galaxies no telescope could ever find. And Fazza, the man who could silence rooms simply by entering, felt small in the most beautiful way. For the first time, he wasn't the center of the story. He was a character learning his own heart, through the presence of someone who saw beyond the prince, beyond the poet, beyond the public figure adored by millions. She saw the man beneath the crown. One evening, as the desert stretched like an endless promise before them, she asked him, "Do you ever feel trapped by who the world thinks you are?" Her voice was soft, yet it carved through his soul like truth always does. He nodded slowly, the weight of unsaid words heavy on his chest. "Yes, sometimes the world loves you so loudly that you forget what your own heart sounds like." She looked at him, really looked, and something in her gaze made the stars above them hold their breath. "You don't have to be Fazza with me," she whispered. "You can just be Hamdan." The name rolled gently from her lips, like a prayer, like a promise, like a key turning in a locked door. And with that single sentence, the prince felt the armor around his spirit crack, in the most delicate, most devastating way. He told her things he had never spoken aloud. The loneliness between applause, the burden behind expectations, the silent ache of carrying a country's love, while longing for a place to rest his heart. She listened the way deserts listen to the rain, fully, gratefully, as if every word he carried was sacred. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes her eyes softened with understanding, and sometimes she said nothing at all, because silence, with her, felt like the safest place in the world. And Dubai watched. The whispers grew louder. Some said she was a poet. Others said she was a traveler, a dreamer, a woman wandering through fate. But no guess ever touched the truth. She was simply the one who saw him, as days folded into nights, and nights blossomed back into days. Their bond deepened in ways that felt ancient and brand new at once. He would write lines inspired by her presence, verses soaked in longing and quiet admiration. She became in the quiet corners of Dubai, where the skyline glitters like a crown, and the wind carries secrets the world will never hear. There walks a man the people call Fazza, a prince on the outside, but a battlefield on the inside. They say he was born with a smile that could soften the hardest dunes, a heart so gentle that even the desert falcons lowered their wings in respect. But they don't know the whole story. They don't know the chapter he never wrote, the ache he never named, the memory he buried beneath the gold of his kingdom. For once, long before the world knew his poetry, there was a woman, not a queen, not a princess, but a quiet star in the shadows. She was older, wiser, the kind of soul who didn't chase the world, but made the world chase her. And Fazza, he fell the way only poets fall. Not suddenly, but like a sandstorm that begins with a single grain of longing, She taught him that silence is also a language, that love is not something you take, but something you protect. In her eyes, he found a home. In her voice, he found prayer. In her presence, he found the part of himself he didn't know was missing. But destiny, that merciless writer, had a different script. She left. Maybe for the sky. Maybe for her own unfinished story. Maybe because some loves are too sacred to stay. And Fazza. The world saw him smiling, but the desert saw him breaking. He began writing poems, not to impress the world, but to speak to the one person who would never hear them again. He poured his heart into words, like a man who builds a bridge to a city that no longer exists. Every verse was a wound. Every line was a confession. Every stanza was a heartbeat that refused to forget. People read his poetry and said, "What a beautiful talent." But they didn't know. Beauty is often born from the ashes of pain. At night when Dubai falls asleep and the moon spills silver over the Arabian Gulf, he still walks alone, carrying a story the world keeps guessing, but never understands. Sometimes he whispers her name to the stars. Sometimes he searches for her shadow in the silence between two breaths. Sometimes he closes his eyes and pretends the wind on his face is her hand returning for a moment. That destiny owes him. But here is the truth he never says, but his poetry reveals. Fazza did not lose her. He kept her. In the lines he writes, in the pauses he hides, in the courage he carries. Love like that never ends. It just changes shape. And so the prince walks on, strong, soft, carrying a wound that turned him into the man millions admire. His heart, though cracked, still shines like the skyline of his city. His soul, though bruised, still stands taller than the Burj Khalifa. His love, though unfinished, still burns brighter than the desert sun. For kings rule kingdoms, but poets rule memories. And Fazza, he rules both, because somewhere in his heart, a woman the world never knew still lives in the poems. Dubai breathes, in the restless heart of Dubai, where the sand sings with the wind, and the towers rise like prayers made of glass. A quiet story began, one that no one expected, one that even time itself paused to witness. For Fazza, the prince whose smile lit lanterns in the souls of millions, carried a heart deeper than the desert's oldest dunes, a heart that hid a silence, a longing, something even Dubai's golden glow couldn't soften. He was loved by all, the children who waved as his horses thundered past, the poets who whispered his name like a blessing, the people who saw in him courage, gentleness, and grace. But one evening, when the desert sky opened its velvet wings, a story changed. Because she walked in, the woman no one knew, yet everyone felt. She wasn't royalty, nor was she wrapped in richness. She carried no diamonds, only a quiet truth that shone brighter than the lights along Sheikh Zayed Road. Her presence didn't shout, it breathed. Softly, completely, dangerously. Fazza saw her the way desert sees the rarest rain. Not as a visitor, but as a miracle. Her eyes held storms and softness in equal measure. And for the first time in years, his heartbeat forgot its royal rhythm and remembered how to dream. Dubai noticed. Whispers grew in the old souks, echoed across the beaches, fluttered between the minarets as dawn unfolded. Who was she? Where did she come from? And how did she make the Prince of Hearts fall silent? As if the world itself had turned into a poem he was still learning to read. He walked with her along hidden desert paths, where the moon painted silver on the sand. He listened, not like a ruler, but like a man who had finally found the one voice that could speak the language of his soul. She told him stories of loss and hope and courage, stories he felt in the marrow of his being. And somewhere between her words and the wind's music, something inside him unlocked. The part of him he never showed, the part Dubai never knew existed. He wrote again, lines that tasted of dusk and longing, poems that wrapped themselves around her shadow. He wasn't Fazza the prince. He was just a man learning how to love without fear. And she changed him. Not by touching his crown, but by touching the part of him he kept hidden, even from himself. Dubai watched, stunned and breathless, as the poet prince walked differently, light yet deeper, strong yet gentler, a man finally unafraid, to hold the truth of his own heart. For in her, he found the silence he had searched for in every sunrise, the peace he had hoped for in every desert ride, the home he never knew he needed. And though the city whispered 1,000 guesses, her name remained a secret wrapped in poetry, held in the warm chambers of his heart, protected like the last star before dawn. But everyone could see it, in his eyes, in his smile, in the way he looked at the sky, as if thanking fate for rewriting his destiny. Dubai had been stunned, yes, but love has a way of show.